It arrived on a Tuesday. Not a special day. Not a holiday, birthday, or anniversary. Just a Tuesday. I was sitting at the kitchen table alone, nursing the bitter tail end of a microwaved dinner. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet you learn to dread in the years after a divorce. A quiet that doesn't mean peace. It means absence. My phone buzzed once. Just once. A simple vibration. No urgency. No sound. I thought it might be a receipt notification, one of the usual charges rolling through my account. Hulu, Amazon Prime, Uber Eats, something small, routine, automatic. Things I no longer used but paid for, out of habit or guilt or some distant sense of obligation I couldn't quite shake. I looked down, expecting a number. Instead, I saw his name. Logan. There was a time his name on my screen made me smile. Made me stand up straighter. I was the man who taught him to ride a bike. Who cheered from the sidelines at every freezing 7 a.m. soccer game. Who taught him to drive in the school parking lot while his mother stayed home with wine and silence. But on that Tuesday, Logan didn't send a greeting. No, hey. No, can we talk? No lead up. Just a sentence like a blade. You're just the ex who still pays. Joel makes the rules now. I stared at it. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I read it again. Not Dad, not even Chris. Just your. Pronoun designed to distance. I wasn't a person in that message, I was a function. A relic. A disconnected utility. The ex who still pays. Joel. That name sat in my throat like smoke. Joel, the new man. The upgrade. He wasn't even in the picture when I was still trying to keep our family together. He came after. After the counseling. After the compromise. After the last of my dignity had bled out in arguments that ended with slammed doors and Karen's tired eyes. Joel was the clean slate, the blank check for a second draft of life. And now he makes the rules. I didn't reply. What was there to say? That he was wrong? That I was still his father? He wouldn't believe me. He already believed Joel. That was when it hit me, not like a punch, but like a quiet, precise scalpel to the chest. I had been replaced. Not just in name, not just in presence, but in function. The man who signs the checks had been demoted to former. I put the phone down. Not face down, there was no drama in it. Just placed it gently on the table, like setting a photograph of someone who died. And I sat there. For minutes. Maybe longer. The microwave's clock blinked 9:23. Then 9:24. Somewhere in that minute I made a decision. I stood up. Walked to my desk in the back room. I hadn't been in there much lately. The air was stale. Papers were still in disarray from last tax season. A faded photo of Logan sat on the shelf. 6 years old, helmet too big, missing front teeth, arms wrapped around my neck as I carried him through the zoo parking lot. I picked it up. That photo had survived the divorce. Made it through moves, redecorating, spring cleaning. Karen didn't want it. I couldn't throw it away. I looked into those eyes and felt nothing. Not sadness. Not nostalgia. Just weight. The weight of everything I had carried. Everything I had built. Everything I had bankrolled. And I realized I had been financing my own erasure. Every dollar I sent was another thread tied around my own neck. A leash. A tax on a fatherhood I no longer possessed. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop. I didn't hesitate. No second thoughts. I moved with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. First, the accounts. I logged into the joint card Karen and I had kept for emergencies. The same card that funded Logan's Uber rides, Spotify family plan, occasional DoorDash orders at 1 a.m. when Joel was asleep and Logan didn't want to wake him. Cancelled. Next, the tuition portal. I was still listed as the primary payer for Logan's community college. 2 more semesters pending. I removed myself. Updated the settings to student pays. No warning. No explanation. Then the subscriptions. Spotify gone. HBO Max gone. Gym membership I hadn't used in 2 years gone. iCloud storage for family photos I was never tagged in gone. Each cancellation brought a strange relief, like unhooking fishing wire embedded in my skin. Then came the utilities. I found myself on the water bill for their new house. Why? Because Joel's credit was Still recovering. Cancelled. Finally, I opened a fresh email. No greeting. No apology. No warmth. Subject: final expenses. Status: ended. No body text. Just sent. A single cold line to sum up the years of warmth that had been drained out of me. There was no anger. Not yet. Just exhaustion. The kind that lives in your bones and whispers, "You've done enough." That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting back every time I had paid for something without being asked, without being thanked. Logan's braces. Logan's band trip to Chicago. The new cleats. The emergency vet bill when our dog, swallowed a sock. Even after Karen left, I still paid. I still answered the late-night calls. I still showed up. But showing up isn't the same as being seen. And now Joel, the man who walked into the chapter 1 had written, was holding the pen. And my son was fine with that. More than fine. He preferred it. So I stopped being the ink. I closed the laptop around 2:30 a.m. The house was silent. My world was smaller now. My role smaller still. But I felt something new. Not peace. Not pride. Just control. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to earn a place. I was reclaiming my absence. The proof came quietly, as most betrayals do. Not through confrontation. Not through confession. But in a whisper. In a voice note I was never meant to hear. It was Logan's teammate Jason who sent it. Not because he liked me. Not because he respected me. But because he hated Joel a little more. Figured you should know what he says when you're not around. The text read. Then the file loaded, 13 seconds long. 1. For megabytes. A dagger in MP3 form. I didn't play it right away. I stared at it like it was glowing. Like opening it would finalize something I hadn't yet admitted to myself. But curiosity isn't the right word for what I felt. It was closer to duty. The kind of duty a man feels when he finally forces himself to look in the mirror and tally what's left. I hit play. Chris is just a sponsor, not a parent. His job is to pay and stay quiet. Joel's voice. Calm. Confident. Almost proud. It didn't sound like a joke. It didn't even sound angry. It sounded like doctrine. Something he'd said enough times that it had turned into a truth for him. And now, for Logan. A sponsor. I paused the message. Rewound it. Played it again. Just a sponsor. That phrase twisted something inside me. Sponsor. The word was antiseptic, bloodless. It implied distance. Money with no affection. Support with no presence. As if I were just a donor they kept alive long enough to harvest. I sat there in my car for 23 minutes after the file ended. In the parking lot of a Wendy's. Engine running. Rain tapping the windshield like fingers reminding me to breathe. The world didn't shift. The earth didn't open. But something inside me settled. Hardened. It wasn't just that Logan had repeated the narrative. It was where he had learned it. And now I had proof. The next time Logan messaged me, 3 days later, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't a clarification. It was a request. That was always the rhythm, distance, then demand. Hey, can you send $400 for the travel tourney? Coach said we got a lock in the hotel. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted to make sure I responded with exactly the clarity he had never given me. I typed, I'll need a written plan showing what you're paying, why it matters, and what you're contributing to the team. Sent. The reply came faster than I expected. Mom says you're being abusive. Joel says you'll cave like always. There it was. The Holy Trinity. Karen's silence. Joel's manipulation. Logan's entitlement. They spoke as one now. A single voice, echoing through the years I had spent building bridges they burned from the other side. I didn't reply, because it wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a negotiation where only one side brought truth. For years I had paid first and asked questions later. I did it because I believed effort would breed recognition. Because I thought love, like interest, would compound. I never realized I was the only one investing. Karen never asked where the money came from when Logan's camps were covered. She never asked if I could afford the second-hand laptop, the replacement cleats, the the spontaneous trip to see his out-of-state cousin. Her only question was, "Can you send it today?" Always today. Never tomorrow. Tomorrow implied planning. Planning implied respect. I had paid so often, so unquestioningly, that they thought it was law. That money would arrive like rainfall, inevitable, ambient, ignored until it stopped. Well, it stopped. For a week there was silence. I thought maybe they understood. Maybe the voice note had embarrassed them. Maybe Logan had finally felt shame. I was wrong. On day 8, Karen called. First time in months. Her voice was soft, disarming. A trick she'd learned long ago when she wanted something but didn't want to own it. "Chris, I don't know what's going on, but Logan's coach reached out. He said he can't register without the hotel money. Why are you putting him in this position?" I kept my voice even. "Because I'm no longer funding Joel's rules." Silence. "Chris, he's just a teenager. He doesn't mean everything he says." He repeated what Joel says. "That's not the same." "It is when he believes it." Another pause. Then her voice dropped into that place where guilt masquerades as reason. "I just don't want him to miss the tournament because of whatever this is between you two." I didn't respond to that, because she already knew. She just didn't want to say it out loud. That this wasn't between me and Logan, or between me and Joel. It was between me and myself. Between the man I had been, generous, invisible, and the man I had become. I ended the call with 5 words. Respect first. Money comes second. She didn't call back. The days that followed were full of passive silence. Logan didn't text. Karen didn't follow up. But I watched the tournament announcements roll out on Facebook. I saw the roster posted. Logan's name wasn't there. Then came the subtle shift. Logan started posting pictures of the after-school job he once mocked. Bagging groceries, stocking shelves, cleaning carts. No captions, just photos, like he wanted me to see. Then came the email, actual email, not a text. "Hi Chris, here's a breakdown of the tournament costs. I'm trying to cover the hotel myself. Working 18 hours a week. My grades are here too. Just wanted to let you know." Attached was a PDF. Clean, detailed, receipts, GPA. A note from his coach praising his punctuality. No requests, no pleas, just effort. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest he'd come. I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. Let him sit. Let Joel stew in the background, wondering where the ATM had gone. Wondering how a teenager who once called me just the ex who still pays was now budgeting for groceries and sending proof of work. He was learning, not because I lectured, not because I demanded, but because I stopped. That's how clarity works. It doesn't come from speeches. It comes from silence that isn't filled with money. But even effort has its moments of weakness. 2 weeks later, Logan cracked. "I got a message. You know you're punishing me for what Joel said, right?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he still didn't get it. I typed slowly. "No, I'm holding you responsible for what you believed." Sent. He didn't reply, but the silence was different this time. Not defiant. Not dismissive. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you finally realize the rules have changed, and the man you thought was a wallet has teeth. That weekend, the coach called me. Not to ask for money, just to talk. I've seen Logan step up. Didn't think he had it in him, to be honest. He's leading drills, volunteering at youth clinics. Quiet but focused. I nodded into the phone, said little. Then came the sentence I didn't expect. "You know, some kids earn their way with time, not money." He paused. "Logan's earning it now." I swallowed hard. Not out of pride, out of grief, because that's all I ever wanted. For him to know what something costs, not just in dollars but in effort, in dignity, in showing up when it's cold, when it's early, when no one's watching. And now, finally, he was learning, because I had stopped teaching, because I had stopped paying, because I had stopped being a sponsor and started being a man who meant what he said. Respect doesn't arrive like a letter. It doesn't knock on your door or announce itself in capital letters. It crawls, drips, It fights to exist in spaces where it was never welcomed. And sometimes it has to be paid for twice, once with years of sacrifice and again with absence. After I stopped funding Logan's life, I expected the collapse. I expected shouting, doors slamming, accusations hurled through the phone. What I didn't expect was the quiet. Karen didn't call again. Not after the last conversation. Logan didn't send any more requests. No angry texts. No sarcastic guilt trips. The silence became its own message. And yet, beneath it, something was moving. It began with receipts. Small ones at first. Photos of paper time cards. Screen grabs of digital pay stubs. A forwarded confirmation from Target about a deposit into Logan's checking account. No context. No demands. Just evidence. Evidence of effort. Then came the grades. A clean, scanned PDF of his midterms. Nothing flashy. No perfect scores. But no FS. No red ink. Just quiet, solid work. I remembered his freshman year, how I used to beg him to study, to stop skipping, to care. Back then, he said school was pointless. Joel says you don't need grades if you know people, he used to mutter. Now he was earning B+s and texting them to the man he once labeled just the ex who still pays. He didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it in the margins of those messages. He was learning how much Joel didn't know. I still didn't pay. Not because I was bitter. Not because I needed him to suffer. But because I needed him to understand that growth must come from within, not be purchased like a subscription service. He had learned how to consume. Now he had to learn how to build. Weeks passed. He took more hours at the grocery store. I knew because Jason, the same teammate who sent me Joel's voice memo, texted me now and then with updates I didn't ask for. Logan's been doing late-night shifts now. Bagging. Stocking. Coach had him run warm-ups today. Kids quieter. Focused. Not a brat anymore. I read the messages. I never replied. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I found myself driving to one of the youth clinics his coach had mentioned. I didn't plan it. I was just out running errands, and the field was on the way home. I parked across the street, stayed in the car, watched from a distance. There he was, my son, or whatever word still fit between us, kneeling next to a group of 6-year-olds with plastic cleats and shirts too big for their torsos. He tied a shoelace for one of them, picked up a spilled water bottle, demonstrated a stretch. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't posturing. He wasn't performing for an audience. He was working, and Joel wasn't there. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't wave. I watched for 20 minutes, then left. There was nothing to say. Not yet. 2 weeks later, the tournament arrived. It was the kind of regional showcase that scouts attended, the kind that separated real players from the weekend warriors. I wasn't planning to go, but the coach texted me directly. If you can make it, you should. I read it twice. Then I showed up. The stadium was bigger than I expected. Aluminum bleachers that burned in the sun. Flags flapping in the wind. Parents in team shirts. Cameras. Clipboards. The whole production. I sat in the top row, far from the main crowd. Alone. The game was tight. Logan's team fought like hell. Logan, who used to drift through games like he was waiting for someone else to lead, was different now. He barked calls. Ran hard. Didn't sub out once. Not because he was the best, but because he earned it. And then, at halftime, the moment came. The coach gathered the team near the midfield line. Parents leaned forward, expecting the usual. Stats. Motivational lines. But he did something different. He called out names. Some players here paid their way with effort. Not money. Silence. Some players didn't wait for help. They earned every hotel bed. Every ride. Every second on the turf. Then he looked directly at Logan. Number 12. Logan. That's what commitment looks like. The parents clapped. The team clapped. Joel, standing near the concession stand with Karen, shifted uncomfortably. I watched his jaw tighten. He looked like a man who had been rehearsing a speech but forgot the lines. The coach wasn't finished. Logan didn't get here on handouts. He showed up. Every practice, every clinic, every shift at his job. Respect doesn't come free. He earned it. And then he turned, looked toward the bleachers, directly at me. That money, that example, didn't come from ego, came from showing up. He held that silence, long enough that everyone turned to see where he was looking. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Once, Joel tried to laugh. One of those tight, dismissive chuckles meant to break tension. But no one joined him. He muttered something to Karen. She didn't answer. The second half began. Logan scored once, assisted twice. His team won, but the Real win came after. No one approached Joel. No parent slapped his back. No one thanked him for his contributions, because he had none. That day, his silence was louder than mine. After the game, Logan walked past me. He saw me. He didn't stop. But he looked at me, really looked. And in his eyes, I didn't see entitlement. I saw shame, and something close to pride. That night, a text came in. No emojis, no jokes, just 10 words. Coach said thanks. You didn't have to come. Appreciate it. I didn't reply, because it wasn't about gratitude anymore. It was about weight. About what happens when the man you dismissed becomes the only one whose absence carries meaning. A few days later, Jason sent me another message. Just a screenshot. A group chat among the team. Joel had posted something snide. Something about sponsors who think they're heroes. One of the boys replied, "Dude, shut up. Logan earned this. Not your money. Not your mouth." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it was validation, but because it confirmed something I had suspected for weeks. The narrative had shifted. The kid who once parroted Joel's poison now stood separate from it. Not by announcement, not by apology, but by action. And Joel? The man who called me a sponsor now looked like a mascot, dressed for the part but empty behind the eyes. Karen didn't reach out. She didn't need to. Her silence now said more than her words ever did. Logan texted me twice more that week. One was a photo of his next paycheck. The other was a video of him running a youth clinic drill. I didn't reply to either, because I was no longer the man who bought affection. I was the man who left the room and let truth fill it. The message was clear now, not just to Logan, but to Joel, to Karen, to the entire circle that once fed off my silence. I was never asking for gratitude. I was demanding accountability. And now, finally, I wasn't the only one who saw it. Came in quietly the way truths usually do. No grand gestures. No music swelling in the background. Just a text. Logan's name lit up my screen again. But this time, there was no request attached. No sarcastic opener. No manipulation buried in false modesty. Just a simple line, 10 words long. I was wrong about the wallet thing. I'm sorry. That was it. No exclamation points. No caveats. Just a brittle sentence from a boy who had finally looked at the wreckage and saw the man who used to carry him through it. I read it twice, then once more. And for the first time in a long while, my heart didn't twist. It steadied. Not because I needed the apology, but because I no longer did. I sat with it for a while. In the same kitchen I used to make pancakes in. The same counter where Logan once spilled orange juice and cried when he thought it ruined my laptop. The same floor where Karen used to dance barefoot when she thought no one was watching. That house was smaller now. Not in size. In weight. I typed my reply slowly. I forgive you. Let's move forward. I meant it. But moving forward didn't mean going back. Because even after forgiveness, some doors remained shut. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. That was the last time Logan ever mentioned Joel. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. Whatever bond they had built on the back of my sacrifices had been sanded down by effort, by truth, by a coach's voice that cut through posturing and left only fact. Joel had been exposed for what he was. A man who talked about fatherhood without carrying its weight. A figure with volume, not presence. All surface, no root. Karen, for her part, never called. And I didn't chase the silence. I let it stretch. Let it fill the space where blame used to live. Because by then, I wasn't looking for closure from her. I had written my own. Still, the residual echoes of those years, of being the second choice who paid like the first, don't vanish just because effort replaces entitlement. They cling. They murmur. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still ask myself, did I wait too long to draw the line? Sometimes when Logan sends updates about classes, work, a new certification he's studying for, I feel pride trying to bloom. But I press it back. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because I know now what that pride cost me the first time. I had spent nearly 2 decades being the man behind the curtain, pulling levers, writing checks, filling in blanks so no one else had to face the gaps. I thought that's what a father was. That love was measured by what you endured without complaint. And maybe, in part, it is. But there's another side to love. One that no one tells you about. The side that requires you to walk away when your presence becomes permission for abuse. When Logan apologized, I didn't see a prodigal son. I saw a young man who had finally carried his own weight long enough to recognize the shape of mine. That matters. It does. But it doesn't undo 16 years of being treated like a utility. It doesn't erase the silence Karen gave me while her son fed me Joel's words like poison. It doesn't unspend the thousands, the missed vacations, the late nights of planning tuition around rent, the credit card I maxed so Logan wouldn't miss his final summer travel league. It doesn't erase the night he told me, with a blank face, that Joel makes the rules now. Some things don't get erased. They just settle. Like sediment, like ash. But there is peace in separation. Peace in establishing borders. Now, every dollar I spend comes with a boundary. I still help Logan, but on my terms. When he sends grades, I respond. When he earns certifications, I fund the next course. Not because I owe him, but because I choose to. And there's a world of difference between those two things. We don't pretend the past didn't happen. But we also don't drag it into every conversation. That's the quiet contract we've signed. No guilt, no revisionism, no pretending we were a family when we weren't. As for Joel, he never called. Not after the game. Not after Logan stopped quoting him. Not after the coach's words peeled his name off the pedestal Karen had quietly mounted him on. He slipped back into silence. The kind of man who only operates in shadows, because the light makes his contributions vanish. Karen, I suspect, still believes I acted out of pride. She would never say it, but I know that look. The one she wore when Logan first came home, stunned by the frozen accounts and the silence from my end. The look that said, you didn't have to go that far. But she forgets I was silent for years. I took every slight, every dismissal, every reminder that I wasn't his real dad, and folded it down into something I could stomach. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept wearing a title that no one let me earn. Until one day I closed the wallet. And when I did, I opened my eyes. And I saw the truth. Love given without limits becomes labor. And labor without recognition becomes debt. Not theirs, mine. Logan has changed. He doesn't ask first anymore, he offers. He sends receipts. He provides breakdowns. He shows his effort. That means something. And yes, I've started helping again, but only after I see his skin in the game. Because respect is the cost now. Not blood, not apology, not even love. Respect. And the strange thing is, now that I've made that the price, Logan seems more willing to pay it than ever before. Maybe because he finally understands what things cost. Maybe because he's no longer being shielded by Joel's arrogance or Karen's silence. Or maybe because he saw what I did when I walked away, and what he lost when I did. I won't pretend this is a happy ending. This isn't a story about reconciliation. It's not a warm blanket where everyone cries and says they're sorry and hugs under the glow of redemption. This is real life. And in real life, some scars stay. Some forgiveness never becomes closeness. Some families don't get repaired, they just get rewritten. So now I live with less noise, less guilt, less wondering if I did enough. Because I know I did. I carried a child who wasn't mine longer than most men carry their own. I loved him without condition. I paid without limits. I stayed long after the door was closed in my face. And when I finally left, I didn't slam it. I just stopped knocking. Now it's quiet. But it's an earned quiet. The kind that comes after a long storm. You sit on the porch, sip your coffee, and you don't forget the thunder. But you're not afraid of it anymore. So I'll end with this. I don't need your applause. I don't want your pity. But I do want your honesty. Was I wrong? Was I wrong to stop paying when the title of father was stripped from my name? Was I wrong to draw the line where others only ever erased mine? Would you have endured it longer? Would you have kept paying, smiling, absorbing the blows, hoping that one day love would make it all worth it? Or would you have done what I did, closed the wallet, opened your eyes, and finally asked, if I'm not your father, why do you deserve my sacrifice? Tell me, would you have stayed, or would you have walked too?